Okay, let's get into this. We're looking at the Great Emu War today. Western Australia, 1932.
Right. It sounds almost unbelievable, doesn't it? The army versus birds.
It really does, but, behind the sort of absurdity, there was some real hardship driving it.
Absolutely. It wasn't just a funny anecdote. It tells us a lot about the time.
So set the scene for us. We're talking post-World War I.
Yeah, exactly. You've got these soldier settlers, veterans, given land that was pretty marginal, not great for farming.
Okay.
And then bam, the Great Depression hits. Wheat prices just collapse.
Oh, man. And they'd been encouraged to plant more, hadn't they? The Grow More Wheat campaign.
They had. But the promised government help, the subsidies,
Mm-hmm.
well, they didn't really come through properly.
So people were angry, desperate even. I read there was serious talk about secession in WA.
There absolutely was. A real feeling of being abandoned, let down.
Yeah.
This emu thing landed right on top of all that frustration.
Right. So the trigger was this huge migration, like a lot of emus.
An enormous number. Estimates are around 20,000 emus moving into the wheat belt areas, places like Campion, Walguland.
20,000, wow. Probably driven by drought further inland?
That's the likely reason, yeah. Seeking food and water, which happened to be the farmers' struggling crops.
And it wasn't just, eating the wheat, was it?
No, they were trampling it, ruining huge swaths, and crucially, they were damaging the rabbit-proof fences.
Ah, letting the rabbits in, too. That's adding insult to injury. Rabbits were a massive pest already.
Exactly. So the farmers, they just couldn't cope. Their usual methods, shotguns, were useless against these numbers.
Which leads to this. Well, this pretty unusual request.
It really was. These settlers, many being ex-soldiers familiar with heavier weapons, they actually petitioned the Minister for Defense, Sir George Pierce.
Asking for machine guns to fight birds.
To fight emus, yeah. It sounds bizarre, but you have to see it as this culmination of desperation. It wasn't just pest control. It felt like maybe a last stand for them.
And incredibly, Pierce. He agreed.
He did. Maybe saw it as helping the vets, good PR, maybe even some useful target practice for the troops.
But not for free, right?
Oh, no. The farmers had to foot the bill. Accommodation, food, transport for the soldiers, and the ammo. Potentially 10 shillings for every emu killed.
Wow. And there was this real belief that, military tech, these Lewis guns, would just sort it out easily.
A total faith in technology over nature, essentially. A classic case of underestimating the opponent, you could say.
Yeah.
And the environment itself.
So the expeditionary force arrives. It's what, one major and a couple of soldiers?
That's it. Major Meredith, 2 soldiers, 2 Lewis guns, and 10,000 rounds of ammunition.
10,000 rounds. They were serious. And a filmmaker tagged along, too.
Yep, a Fox movie-tone cinematographer. They wanted to capture the glorious victory, presumably.
But then the weather didn't cooperate.
Nope. Rain came down, the emus scattered before they even really started. Bit of an anticlimax initially.
Okay, so eventually they engage, November 2nd, near Campion.
That's the first attempt.
Mm-hmm.
Saw maybe 50 emus, but they were too far off. The Lewis guns didn't have the effective range, really. The birds just bolted. Very few kills, if any.
Not a great start. But then they got another chance. At a dam.
Yes, November 4th. A much bigger group, over 1,000 emus, apparently gathered near a dam. This looked like the moment.
The perfect ambush.
You'd think so. But they opened fire, maybe got about a dozen, and then one of the guns jammed.
Oh, you're kidding.
Nope. Gun jammed, the element of surprise was lost, and the huge flock just vanished into the landscape.
And the emus themselves, they weren't just standing there, were they? They had tactics.
Well, tactics might be anthropomorphizing, but their natural behavior was incredibly effective. They're fast up to 50K an hour.
That's quick.
And they didn't stay in one big mob. They'd break into small, unpredictable groups, making them incredibly hard targets for machine guns designed for different kinds of targets.
Someone called it guerrilla tactics, didn't they?
Yeah, the ornithologist Dominic Cervanti did. It captured how elusive they were. And tough.
Tough how?
Reports said they could absorb multiple bullets and just keep running. Their feathers and thick skin offered some protection. Major Meredith famously compared them to tanks.
Tanks. And Zulus, apparently, for their ability to face machine guns without panicking like other animals.
It shows the soldiers' grudging respect, I suppose, but also their frustration. Their methods just weren't working.
How bad was it, in terms of ammo used versus results?
By November 8th, they'd fired about 2,500 rounds. The kill count estimates vary wildly, maybe 50, maybe up to 500, but certainly nowhere near enough to make a dent.
And they tried mounting a gun on a truck.
Yeah, that failed too. The ride was too bumpy for accurate fire, and they couldn't keep up with the emus anyway. Might have even made things worse by scattering them more.
So the press starts catching on around this time.
Oh yes, the newspapers had a field day. Emu War. Headlines. Stories mocking the military being outsmarted by birds. It became a national, even international, joke.
Poor Minister Pierce must have regretted it. Minister for the Emu War.
He faced a lot of ridicule in Parliament. Definitely. Huge embarrassment for the government.
And were there other objections? Besides the inefficiency?
Yes. Ethical concerns started cropping up. Conservationists, even in the UK, protested the idea of exterminating native wildlife. Ornithologists called it mass destruction.
Right. It wasn't just about farming anymore.
No. So the combination of failure, cost, bad press, and these ethical questions led to the first withdrawal on November 8th.
But they went back.
The farmers kept pleading. Premier Mitchell backed a second attempt later in November, running into December. Meredith was put back in charge.
Did it go any better?
Meredith claimed much higher success the second time, 986 kills, with nearly 10,000 rounds. So roughly 10 rounds per kill, plus maybe 2,500 wounded. But even those numbers are disputed and, frankly, had almost no impact on the total emu population.
So still pretty inefficient, really.
Utterly. The operation was finally called off for good. Too expensive, too much negative attention, and just not working. Plus, a growing reluctance to use the military for pest control.
So what did work in the end? How did they eventually manage the emu problem?
Much simpler, more traditional methods. A bounty system was introduced later, and it proved far more effective. Over 57,000 bounties claimed in 6 months in 1934.
Wow, okay, so incentivizing individuals worked better than military hardware.
That and exclusion fencing. Better, stronger fences, specifically designed to keep emus out of croplands, became the real long-term solution. Understanding ecology, not just applying force.
It really is a fascinating story. Human plans versus, well, nature just being nature.
It's a classic example of hubris, perhaps. Underestimating wildlife, thinking technology solves everything. A military solution for an ecological problem rarely works well.
So, looking back, the Great Emu War. It's funny, yes, but also kind of humbling, isn't it?
Definitely. A weird, unique moment in history that serves as a bit of a cautionary tale about how we interact with the wild world.
A reminder that nature often has the last laugh, maybe.
Perhaps. It certainly leaves you thinking, doesn't it? It makes you wonder, where else do we maybe default to forceful approaches, when a deeper understanding, a more ecological way of thinking might actually be the key, something for you to ponder.